This story takes place in February of the year 1989. I regularly visited my friend on the weekends to catch up with him, check out what was going on in his life, and to also use his television to watch any big games or sports events. He always had pay-per-view on HBO and Showtime, so if there was any boxing, he'd host me and a huge group of other friends. Because of this, I'd bring by money to cover food, snacks, and a little bit of something for the cost of ordering the pay-per-view. This one was a big one though. It was Mike Tyson against Frank Bruno. We were fired up. It had been a long time since Tyson had destroyed Michael Spinks in 91 seconds and cemented his place as the undisputed heavyweight king. As usual, I would come over the night before, drop the money off with the snacks and get everything ready and prepared. We might hang out, watch some sports that night, and a movie, and discuss the future. By the time everyone else came the next day, everything was in place. I made the drive over, weaving and bobbing through traffic, each traffic light turning green the moment I got in the lane to approach it. This was my night, I thought. Everything just felt like it was falling into place for me. I turned down the street on the way to my friends, went from Vermont Street to Colden Street, and then finally hit South Hoover Street. I was almost on the 7400 block where he and I shared a mutual location. I was nearing his house, and something felt different. Instead of the palm trees lightly moving back and forth in the wind, swaying as if they were waving at me and saying hello, there was an eerie stillness. Every house around his had their lights off. And his house? Well, only the downstairs light was on. I wondered if I was too late and had waited too long. I checked my Timex wristwatch on my right hand and it was just after 7:30 at night in February. It was dark outside, but it wasn't late. Was he home? I'd called before I left the house and left a message on his answering machine that I was en route. That was my and his practice, like clockwork. I parked my car in his driveway and looked through my windshield to see if I could see anyone stirring in the living room through the curtains. They were open, and the light was on. But I didn't see anyone. That was weird. I got out of my car, shut the door, and locked it. And with all the shopping for the big day in my right hand, carried it up to the door. I knocked and waited. I knocked for a second time and waited. After the third time, I looked right to left, then slid my hand under the doormat by the mailbox and retrieved the spare key and opened the door. I loudly announced, "What's up, man? It's me! Where are you?" I called out his name and announced mine and only heard a muffled acknowledgement. I pulled all the bags in, shut the door and pocketed the key before picking up the stuff and heading to the kitchen. I bent my legs and heaved upwards to lift all the shopping with one move and place it on the kitchen counter. I shouted out my friend's name through a smile as I turned on the lights and started putting all the groceries in their usual place in preparation for the big fight. Guacamole in the fridge, Funyuns in the kitchen cupboard near the sink, sodas in the cabinet, the usual method to make it easy to get to for company. Everything was almost away when my friend walked in. "Hey man, where were you? I thought you weren't home." I looked at him as he came in. We smiled at one another, gave a sideways hug, and shook hands after. No, I was here. Just in the back getting stuff together. I heard you on the machine, but I didn't have time to get to it to pick up. You find everything? I said that I had and handed over the money to him and told him that I knew the cost of pay-per-view had gone up, so I threw a little bit more on top to cover it. He smiled at me in appreciation, and then brought me up to date with the newest movies that were on the stations of the day. We sat in the living room on the long couch, and he pulled out a universal remote that looked close to the size of a yardstick and started flicking through channels. The movie channel, HBO, Showtime, so many channels, so little time. Too bad a day only had 24 hours, otherwise him and I could watch half a dozen movies in a night. We wanted no parts of overly romantic or gooey love stories, which we usually called chick flicks. We as guys were looking for something with more meat to it, something that would hold our attention. We found Legacy of Rage and promptly chose that. The movie had tons of action, and during the quieter periods we argued back and forth who the winner of the fight would be tomorrow, who had the speed, whether the champ was washed up or the new guy could really do something. We even kicked around the idea of driving to Las Vegas one day to see Mike Tyson fight live. At one point we needed popcorn and soda. I got up and headed to the kitchen to make some popcorn and grabbed some Shasta sodas that had been left out. Might as well drink this generic stuff and not the good stuff we got for tomorrow, I reasoned. Once it was ready, I poured some liquid butter over the popcorn and shook a few tablespoons of brown sugar over it, and gave it a shake back and forth so it was equally spread. On the way back to the couch, I saw something on the back of my friend's neck, just under the hairline and above the nape of the neck. It was oval in shape. It looked like a tattoo, but it was risen up on the skin, like it had been stamped or branded into the skin. I had seen it before but never thought to ask. On this night it looked more prominent, and as my friend had more brown skin, it seemed more inflamed. Was it infected? I wondered. I sat down and put the popcorn and generic sodas down on the table in front of us. While watching the movie, I broached the subject. Stuffing my face with popcorn, I looked over at him and waited for a reply. He looked at me and then immediately looked at the floor. Listen, if it's a failed tattoo or something, it's not my business. I shouldn't be in your business, for real. It was such a cool night and we were hanging out. I didn't want to mess anything up. Then he started crying. Really crying. I mean, his shoulders were shaking and everything. I'd never seen my friend like this at all. He was always very together, very strong and dominant. I'd never seen him so distraught. I knew there was something else going on. I asked him to talk to me, to tell me what the problem was and that I respect him. All of us as his friends respect him. What he said next completely changed my life. It even drowned out the television. The generic soda and popcorn lost their taste. I can't even remember whether or not I stopped chewing the popcorn in my mouth or just swallowed it in shock. My friend of all these years looked at me and started explaining to me about this mark and how he got it. He started by explaining that he was deep in Southern California years ago in a car, that he'd seen some type of light in the sky while he was parked in the desert looking at the sky. The next moment he remembered is that he was being drugged from the car and he could feel himself being carried but couldn't speak or move. He could hear his feet dragging. At one point, the people carrying him stopped and he was then dragged up a ramp and he felt them going up, as if levitating. Once he was able to move and speak, he rolled over and to his horror saw these strange beings. They were grayish and green and way taller than him. He estimated them to be 7 foot tall or maybe more. They had almond-shaped black eyes, no nose except for 2 holes and just a line for where their mouths would be, but without any definition of lips. Midway through this, I looked at my friend like, "What in the hell are you talking about? Are you messing with me?" I studied his face intently, and he was not joking. He wasn't really the joking type either. I wondered whether he was maybe under the influence of something, but he hadn't drank, and he hated smoking and other recreation drugs. His only habit was drinking, and I didn't smell any alcohol. The only thing I'd had that night was popcorn and really bad generic soda. He continued on explaining that they were communicating with him not with words but with thoughts. They grabbed him, put him on something like a gurney, and inserted a 1-foot-long hypodermic needle into his belly button. He screamed in pain, but they continued, inserting needles in many different places. They stripped him naked, pointed at his body and genitalia and mocked him, comparing his build to theirs and declaring him inferior. There was no verbal communication. They then explained that all the checks were to confirm his species, gender, and whether or not he was of childbearing age and also if he was pregnant or not. At the end of all of these procedures that left him howling in pain, they branded him with the mark that I had seen on the back of his head. It's like they had logged him, or maybe cataloged him as part of their experimentation. When they returned him to his car in the middle of the desert, he had lifelong issues with that mark. Joint pain, and also nightmares. I sat in stunned silence. I tried to comfort him with what words I could, but what could I say? My friend had been abducted, tortured, and then returned to the site of capture and just left there. Who were these beings? What did they want? My friend has never lied to me or anything like that. So when he recounted these events to me, I believed him and trusted what he said. The strongest evidence to me was that brand on his head and the unexplained joint pains and such. The rest of the night was rather awkward as we tried to return to the moments we had before this shocking admission, but we just couldn't. The following day, all the friends came over. We enjoyed the fight. My friend had almost completely returned to his normal jovial self. I still felt fear and sorry for him, and thought that maybe if the rest of the friends knew, they could offer a better support system as a group than I could as just one person. I looked at him and our eyes met. I knew what I wanted to do, and so did he. I was about to sit up and make an announcement for everyone to listen up and that we need to talk, but he gently waved his hand and shook his head side to side and motioned to the television. I looked at him and at all the faces enjoying the fight, which ended in the 5th round by technical knockout by the way, and silently agreed. Maybe it was enough that him and I had been able to talk about it. Maybe that was all the comforting he needed. To try to go into anything more would just drudge up the pain even more than it had already been on the night he told me. The fight night went without a hitch and everyone had an amazing time, but every time I saw my friend after that I would always wonder to myself, is he okay? Should I approach the subject again? Is this the best option for him? To just not talk about it? I thought about talking about it one more time with him but was robbed of the chance when he brutally lost his life one night under very strange circumstances. I never was able to talk with about it again. Maybe these things are best left alone. Please subscribe to High Class Gear, give the channel a like and hit the notification bell so you can always get more great content.